Good kill, good kill. Hey, good kill.
The Bell UH-1 Iroquois, nicknamed the Huey, is a utility military helicopter powered by a single turboshaft engine with two-bladed main and tail rotors. The first member of the prolific Huey family, it was developed by Bell Helicopter to meet a 1952 U.S. Army requirement for a medical evacuation and utility helicopter. It first flew in 1956. The Huey was at first optimized for internal stretcher carriage, but later Huey variants became jacks of all trades, most notably in the Vietnam War, thanks in large to the reliability of its turbine engines, a revolutionary upgrade from the reciprocating piston design of earlier helicopters. From 1955 to 1975, the Vietnam War wreaked havoc on North Vietnam and South Vietnam in a struggle to unify the nation. North Vietnam sought to force its southern counterpart into communism, while the South struggled to retain a Western view on government. The United States was one of many countries who became involved in the war, at first by sending military advisors to South Vietnam. This quickly increased to full military involvement from the United States, with President John F. Kennedy sending troops to the divided country. When the United States joined the war, they soon discovered that ground troops were next to useless due to Vietnam's terrain. The vast jungles and mountains proved difficult to traverse, and it became clear that a new way of fighting was needed. The Huey became the taxi of the new air mobility doctrine of warfare, with gunships escorting troop carriers into enemy territory and clearing landing zones with rockets and machine gun fire before the less heavily armed slicks inserted Marines or Army units and made a quick withdrawal. The final major variant of the UH-1H arrived in 1967 with a 1400 horsepower turboshaft engine, which allowed the design to carry 4,000 pounds of personnel or cargo as far as 285 miles without additional fuel tanks. Though its mission portfolio expanded steadily, the Huey retained its role as a medevac vehicle, transporting nearly 2 million wounded throughout the conflict. Three different versions of the Huey were used in the war. The Slicks, named after their smooth appearance with little to no armor or weaponry. They were used as transports in place of jeeps and other military vehicles. These birds could carry 8 fully armed soldiers on their way to battle the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese army. The dust-off units were medevac units, swooping into the thick of battle and carrying the wounded to a hospital for care. These units consisted of 6 Hueys, and each Huey carried a pilot, a co-pilot, 2 medics, and had enough room for 6 stretchers. On average, it took a dust-off Huey 100 minutes to reach a hospital. Approximately 390,000 wounded were transported via the dust-off. Of that number, 90% of the wounded survived, thanks to the dust-off's quick response time. But both the dust-offs and the slicks were next to defenseless, and many were shot down before reaching their destination. The need for an armed Huey was present, and so the gunship was born. The Huey gunship was a new concept, with a potential that hadn't been tapped into with helicopters of World War II and the Korean War. They were heavily armed helicopters equipped with weapons to defend the utility and dust-off Hueys. Their main purpose was to escort these 2 other units and rain firepower down on whoever challenged them. Some were equipped with miniguns that could fire up to 4,000 rounds per minute, while others could hold up and fire up to 48 rockets. Even the mechanics that flew with them served as door gunners. The gunship's sole mission was to destroy the Viet Cong anytime and anywhere it could find them. While the Huey was useful in the war, it was not without its problems. The rotors of the Huey were expected to last 1,000 flight hours before needing to be replaced. However, under the harsh Vietnam conditions, they needed replacements every 200 hours. In general, the Huey needed repairs frequently, and if a Huey was deemed unfit to fly due to damage, it was out of commission until repaired. On top of their maintenance issues, Hueys were singled out and heavily targeted. To fly safely, the Huey needed to keep close to the treetops. This made for slow attacks, and they were still susceptible to ground fire from the enemy. They also only attacked their target up until they were 500 feet away, then turned around to avoid flying over the enemy. Pilots had a $25,000 reward on their head, which made their job even more dangerous. But as a credit to their effectiveness in the skies above the battlefield, In the case where both a pilot and co-pilot were unable to fly due to an injury or death, a lever could be pulled by a crew member behind them and the seat would recline so that they could be removed. During the war, the US logged over 10 million flight hours in helicopters, with well over 11,000 helicopters in service. During that time, about 5,600 helicopters fell from the skies over Vietnam, with more Hueys being shot down than any other type of aircraft. The staggering losses can be attributed to the fact that there was practically no armor on helicopters at that time. They often removed the doors, flew low level, inserted troops into hot LZs, risking landing on booby traps in the high grass, not to mention the extraordinary amount of non-combat related failures and accidents to be expected with such a large amount of flights generated over the course of several years. And let's not forget that most choppers featured a single engine at that time, so a direct hit often meant a crash. Approximately 40,000 US helicopter pilots flew in the Vietnam War. Approximately 2,200 pilots were killed, along with 2,700 crewmen. When you do the math on those numbers, that's 5.5% of Huey pilots who never made it back. Considering that the average pilot flew 4 times a week, he could expect that during his tour in Vietnam, every 5 weeks he faced death, with the odds of survival stacked against him. The Huey remains an icon of the Vietnam War. Some people even refer to it as the helicopter war. Many veterans still remember the sound of its rotors beating against the thick Southeast Asian air, while others recall how it saved their lives. To the US and the South Vietnamese troops, it was a hero and a savior.